I always knew my family wasn't like most, but a small part of me believed they'd still show up when it counted. Turns out, I was wrong. My name's Charlotte Monroe, though most people call me Charlie. I'm 34, a former Marine with 12 years in service, 2 deployments overseas. When I finally left the Corps, I imagined a quieter life, maybe even starting a family of my own. About 2 years ago, I met Ryan Wallace. He was nothing like my family, kind, dependable, the kind of man who actually listens. He works in search and rescue, and when he asked me to marry him, I didn't think twice. We planned a simple wedding, no country club nonsense, no extravagant decor. Just close friends, people who actually cared. I even sent invitations to my parents, Stephen and Linda, adding a personal note in hopes we could mend things. But the truth? They've never really approved of me. In their eyes, joining the Marines was me running away from responsibility. They always preferred Melissa, my younger sister, the lawyer, the perfect golden child who never broke the rules. While I was trudging through Afghan sand in combat boots, Melissa was earning law school awards and posting brunch selfies with Mom. Dad bragged about her every chance he got. In Charleston, appearances matter. My parents played the part perfectly, well-dressed, well-connected, smiling at every country club dinner while silently judging every choice I made. Still, I convinced myself they'd be there for my wedding. I wanted to believe blood meant something. On the morning of my wedding, I woke up early in my childhood bedroom. I'd chosen to stay there one last time, feeling oddly sentimental. I pulled out my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one she wore on her wedding day, and felt a rare sense of calm. Then my phone buzzed. Just a faint vibration, but it shattered everything. On Instagram, my mom had posted a picture of Melissa at a charity event in Palm Beach. She was draped in designer clothes, the caption reading, "So proud of our perfect daughter, Melissa." Family means everything. Family means everything? Apparently not enough to attend your eldest daughter's wedding. I scrolled through the comments, Melissa's such a gem. Helen, you raised them right. So blessed. Not a single mention of me. I was invisible. The problem child. The black sheep who left home to chase some foolish idea of duty. I set the phone down, took a slow breath, and adjusted my veil. Ryan deserved a happy bride. My friends deserved a day without my family's drama. I told myself I didn't care, but my reflection told another story. My hands trembled. My smile was stiff. My stomach was tied in knots. A knock broke the silence. "Charlie, you okay in there?" It was Leah, my maid of honor and best friend since high school. She knew everything, how my parents ignored me, how they worshipped Melissa, how they dismissed my military service as some rebellious phase I'd grow out of. I opened the door. Leah didn't even need to ask. She took my phone, saw the post, and muttered, "Unbelievable. Today of all days." Yep, I forced a laugh. Classic Monroe move. She sat beside me. "You don't have to let this ruin your day." "You know they already have," I whispered. But something shifted in that moment. Sitting there in my wedding dress, surrounded by people who truly cared. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. Not the hot, reckless kind, this was a cold, sharp anger, the kind that comes when you finally accept who people really are. I'd spent years trying to prove my worth to them, joining the Marines to show I was strong, paying off their mortgage to prove I was responsible, swallowing my pride when they insulted me, hoping someday they'd respect me. And what did it earn me? A mother who skipped my wedding to post Instagram photos of my sister. Leah put a hand on my shoulder. "Charlie, you've always deserved better." She was right. I did. And right then, I made a choice I should have made years ago. I was done being the daughter they overlooked. I was done waiting. Done hoping they'd ever be different. When I walked down that aisle, I didn't waste a thought on the 2 empty seats that should have held my parents. I didn't care about Instagram captions or who they chose to celebrate. For the first time in years, my smile was real, because I finally understood. I didn't need them. I never had. The veil's gentle weight on my head was a reminder that today was meant for joy. The sunlight was soft and warm, guests beaming, and Ryan already waiting at the altar. My chest still felt tight, like I couldn't quite breathe, but I smiled anyway. That walk down the aisle felt longer than any deployment I'd endured, not from nerves or excitement, but because my mother's smug words echoed in my head, proud of our perfect daughter, Melissa. Family means everything. I scanned the rows. Friends from the Marines. Ryan's family. Neighbors. Every seat taken except two, right at the front. Stephen and Linda Monroe's seats. I'd left them empty on purpose. No flowers. No cover-up. Let everyone see they weren't there. Ryan's face lit up when he saw me, a joy so genuine it couldn't be faked. He didn't look at those empty chairs. Neither did I. Not again. By the time I reached him, I told myself I wasn't thinking about my parents anymore. The ceremony was everything we'd hoped for, simple, beautiful. Ryan's vows made me laugh and cry in the same breath, and mine came out more honest than I'd ever dared to be. When we exchanged rings, the world shrank to just us, the quiet breath of our friends around us. No judgment. No pretenses. No family drama. The reception was at a small local venue, exposed brick walls, soft string lights. Nothing grand, but perfect. Ryan's parents gave a toast, his dad's voice cracked as he thanked me for my service. His mom hugged me tightly and whispered, "We're so proud to have you in our family." I nearly broke down right there. I had never known what unconditional acceptance felt like until that moment. We danced, laughed, and sang to songs I barely knew the lyrics to. Ryan didn't stop smiling all night, and honestly, neither did I. But somewhere beneath the joy, there was a hollow space I couldn't quite ignore. Every so often, I'd catch sight of those untouched chairs in the corner, the silent reminder, my parents had skipped my wedding. Not because they couldn't be there. Not because they were sick. But because they chose not to come. By late evening, I stepped outside for some air. Leah joined me a few minutes later, 2 champagne glasses in hand. "Still thinking about them?" she asked. She already knew the answer. I didn't say yes. I didn't have to. She handed me a glass. "They don't deserve you." They never did. I leaned against the brick wall, letting the cool night air wash over me. I know, but it's not just today. It's every year I spent trying to earn their approval. Every deployment, every unanswered call. Every holiday I hoped might be different. Leah slipped her arm around me. "You could have built your life anywhere, Charlie. And you did. On your own. You even kept them afloat, didn't you?" Her words hit harder than I wanted to admit, because she was right. They didn't even know half of what I'd done for them. I had been their invisible safety net. And on the day I married a man who truly loved me, they weren't even ashamed to stay away. They hadn't just skipped my wedding, they were flaunting it online. Almost without thinking, I checked my phone, and there it was again. The same photo from earlier, now plastered on my mom's Facebook, dripping with passive-aggressive pride, so grateful for our perfect family. Perfect family. The nerve of it actually made me laugh, a short, bitter sound that even caught Leah off guard. "It's funny," I said eventually. "They think they're untouchable, but they're not. They never were. They just got used to me quietly cleaning up their messes." Leah's eyes narrowed. "Charlie, what are you planning?" I straightened, handed her my champagne glass, and let out a slow breath. "I'm thinking it's time they find out what happens when I stop cleaning up." Something shifted inside me in that moment, a quiet certainty replacing the years of doubt and guilt I'd been dragging around. Today's hurt wasn't just about one missed wedding. It was the final straw after a lifetime of small betrayals and big disappointments. The night wound down. Guests hugged us goodbye, left with warm wishes and smiles. Ryan and I stayed until the end, helping clear tables. We liked it that way, no rush, no show, just us. When we finally got home, I slipped out of my wedding dress, still wearing the ring, but feeling more like a soldier than a bride. My phone kept buzzing, friends tagging me in pictures from the day, moments I wasn't sure how to process. But one thing was certain, this wasn't just about today. It was about everything before and everything after. The next morning, I sat on the edge of our new couch, watching sunlight spill through the blinds like it had no idea how heavy I felt inside. Ryan was still asleep, one arm lazily draped over a pillow, while my thoughts ran wild. We hadn't planned a honeymoon, not because we didn't want one, but because I told him I needed time. Time to settle. Time to unpack more than just boxes. The wedding had been beautiful, maybe too beautiful compared to the quiet anger I'd been carrying beneath every smile. Ryan's family had welcomed me in ways mine never had, his mom's warm laugh as she hugged me, his dad's tear-filled voice during his toast. I didn't grow up with that. I never knew what it was like to be celebrated without conditions. But those two empty front-row chairs, bare and unadorned, never left my mind, not during the vows, not during the cake cutting, not even during our first dance. And the stubborn part of me kept wondering, if they had shown up, would it have changed anything? Would I have forgiven all those years they ignored me just because they decided to sit down and clap? Probably. And I hated that about myself. It was during that first dance that I made my choice. Ryan was laughing, spinning me across the small wooden floor, completely unaware that his bride wasn't thinking about the music or the guests. I was thinking about mortgage payments. I doubt many brides think about bank statements on their wedding night, but I did. Specifically, the mortgage I'd been secretly paying on my parents' house for 3 years. It hadn't started because they asked. They'd never admit they needed me. It started after I came back from deployment and found out my dad had lost nearly everything in a failed real estate deal. And yet, to the outside world, they were still Charleston royalty, posting vacation shots, attending country club parties, bragging about their flawless daughters. They never mentioned the $3,000 I wired every month without fail. Not because they asked, but because I felt like I had to. Because some foolish part of me believed that if I gave enough, sacrificed enough, they might finally see me as worthy. By the end of the night, it hit me like a punch. After all that effort, they still couldn't even show up. And while they were busy praising Melissa online on my wedding day, I was standing there smiling through my vows, pretending I didn't care. But I did care. That was the problem. Caring hurt. The next morning, coffee in hand, I scrolled through the photos our friends had posted overnight, me laughing, Ryan holding my hand, people dancing. No sign of my parents anywhere. They were gone from the room, but not from the corner of my mind where they'd always lingered. I set my phone down, pressing my palms over my face. My body felt drained, yet my thoughts were lit up like a switch I couldn't turn off, every detail replaying on loop. What stung most wasn't just that they missed my wedding. It was how unapologetic they were about it. They didn't simply stay away, they turned the day into another spotlight moment for Melissa, their untouchable favorite. This wasn't about being unable to come. They chose not to, and made sure everyone understood exactly why. And that was the difference. I'd kept everything hidden until now. I'd been their quiet safety net, unseen, dependable. They shamed me in public, but I'd been bailing them out in private. Not anymore. Ryan stirred beside me on the couch, voice rough with sleep. "Hey," he mumbled. "How are you feeling?" For the first time since the whole wedding had begun, my smile came without hesitation. "Good," I said, and meant it. Really good. I knew what needed to happen next. The wedding had ended last night, but my real life, the one without this constant weight, was starting here in this living room. I was done covering their mistakes. done carrying debt so they could keep up their little performance. My eyes shifted to the laptop on the coffee table. One quick login, a few clicks, and the payments would stop. No explanations, no warning. When the mortgage came due and they wondered why the bank hadn't been paid, they'd hear nothing from me. And that silence would say more than I ever could. I flipped open the laptop, feeling more awake than I had in days. No hesitation this time, no waiting for some right moment. The banking screen loaded, and there it was, the recurring payment. $3,000. Every month. Clockwork. They had no idea. In their minds, maybe the bank had graciously restructured the loan for them. In their world, someone else was always smoothing the path, fixing the mess quietly. But the truth? I'd been covering that mortgage for 3 solid years. It began after my second deployment. I'd dropped by the house and noticed subtle cracks in their picture-perfect life. My dad's smug grin was gone. My mom's closet wasn't filled with the latest designer clothes. The country club photos had slowed to a trickle. Then I overheard a hushed conversation, bank notices, falling behind. When I asked my dad, he brushed it off with a drink in his hand. Paperwork mix-up, he'd said, calm as ever. You know how banks are. I didn't believe a word. So I called the bank myself, pretending I was helping them manage things. That's when I learned they were already 2 payments behind, with worse to come. I stepped in without telling them. Set up the payments. Every month, without fail. I told myself I was protecting them, saving their house, their reputation, their pride. But deep down, I was hoping to buy something else, their approval. I thought that if I rescued them enough times, they'd finally see me. Finally value me. Instead, they went right back to life as usual, shopping, socializing, boasting. Even Melissa seemed blissfully unaware. And now, the morning after my wedding, my mom was still online praising her perfect younger daughter while I stared at the math of my sacrifice. $3,000 a month for 3 years, $108,000 in total. Not counting the extras when late fees popped up. They never thanked me. They never knew. And honestly, even if they had known, I doubt it would have changed a thing. Ryan returned with 2 mugs of coffee, setting one in my hands before sinking onto the couch beside me. I can't believe you did all that for them, he said quietly. He told me softly. Ryan had only learned about the mortgage a few days before the wedding, when a letter from the lender showed up by accident. You should have told me sooner, he said. I know, I murmured, curling both hands around my coffee mug, eyes fixed on the payment schedule glowing from my laptop screen. I was embarrassed. I didn't want you to see how ridiculous it was, me paying for their house while they treat me like I barely belong. It's not ridiculous, Ryan replied quietly. It's generous. Way too generous. That made me laugh, a short, bitter laugh that almost felt cleansing. Generous, sure. Or maybe just desperate. Looking back, I could pinpoint the moments I should have walked away. When they didn't call after my deployments. When they forgot my birthday more than once. When every choice I made was met with criticism. But instead of stopping, I kept sending that silent, monthly payment, my own little tax for the approval I never received. And what did I get for it? They skipped my wedding. Mocked me online. Showered my sister with endless praise like she was the only child worth acknowledging. The screen blinked back at me, next payment due next week. My fingertip hovered over the cancel option. This time, it wasn't just about cutting off the money, it was about stripping away the illusion that their life was intact because of their own good fortune or smart decisions. No more invisible rescues. No more pretending. Ryan leaned in, reading my thoughts. You gonna do it? I nodded. It's past time. I hadn't pressed it yet, but just knowing I would was enough to loosen the knots in my shoulders. The relief hit fast, sharp and certain. I sipped my coffee slowly, set the mug down, and closed the laptop for a moment. I wasn't going to rush it. I wanted to savor this choice. When I finally clicked the button, 3 years of automatic payments ended in an instant. It didn't feel explosive, it felt steady, controlled, and long overdue. You okay? Ryan asked, watching my face. Yeah, I said, shutting the laptop fully. For the first time in years, yeah. In a few days, the mortgage bill would arrive. They'd get the notice. No warning from me. No explanations. I'd been their quiet safety net long enough. They didn't stand up for me, so I wouldn't stand up for them anymore, not even financially. I stood, stretched, and felt a surprising lightness. There was no guilt. Not even a trace. I'd carried that for years, guilt for not being their favorite, for not fitting their picture of the perfect daughter, for falling short in every way they measured. Now, in our small living room with Ryan beside me, that guilt was gone. Burned out. In its place was something sharper, cold clarity. Because this had never really been about the money. It was about a debt I'd been paying since childhood. Years of trying to earn the same look they gave Melissa. I'd been paying their mortgage for 3 years, but long before that, I'd been paying with my time, my decisions, my silence. I thought loyalty would buy love. It never did. Ryan kept glancing at me like he was expecting a breakdown. But I was steady, more steady than I'd been in months. Maybe years. Later that day, I opened my banking app and typed a new memo into the account they'd eventually ask about. Funding provided by the daughter you never wanted. Short. Direct. Perfect. It made me smile as I hit save. It's strange how quickly peace comes back when you finally stop carrying someone else's weight. The quiet in the apartment felt different now, clean, unburdened. No shame hanging in the air, no pressure pressing in. Just me, Ryan, and a clear way forward. That night we ordered takeout and ate cross-legged on the floor, the dining table still in pieces from the move. We teased each other about already slipping into married life, but underneath the jokes, we both knew this was something bigger. This was me drawing a hard boundary. Choosing myself for once. I could already picture the scramble when my parents saw the unpaid bill. The frantic calls to the bank. The confident assumption that some clerical mistake had happened. Eventually, their eyes would land on the memo I'd left in the payment history. This time, I wouldn't be watching for their reaction. The perfect Monroe family image they guarded so carefully would start to fracture, and I wouldn't lift a finger to stop it. They never knew the payments had been coming from me. They'd built their own narrative, self-made, savvy, financially secure. In reality, they'd been bankrupt for 3 years, kept afloat by the daughter they treated like a footnote. I thought briefly about Melissa, the golden child. The one they boasted about while quietly using my money to keep their home. Would she notice? Probably not. She was too busy polishing her perfect daughter persona on Instagram. And honestly, that suited me fine. I didn't care how she or they spun this. I didn't need anything from them anymore. No more rescue missions. No more taking their calls. No more smoothing things over while they pretended to be untouchable. I was done. Ryan raised his beer toward me. To peace, he said. I smiled. And to letting them sink or swim on their own. That night, I slept deeper than I had in years. No monthly reminders of their chaos. No pangs of guilt about whether I'd done enough to earn their love. No silent loyalty going only one way. The next morning, sunlight poured through the blinds, and the faint scent of last night's takeout lingered in the room. My chest felt lighter, as if a weight I hadn't even noticed had finally slipped away. The payment was cancelled. My conscience was clear. All that was left was for reality to catch up with them. Week 1 passed without a ripple. No calls. Their social media looked unchanged, brunch selfies, charity gala snapshots, and Melissa's endless girl boss attorney content. If they sensed their financial facade teetering, they didn't show it. But I knew exactly when the first failed payment would hit. Exactly when the bank would send that neatly worded notice, "Your mortgage is overdue." By week 2, I could feel the tension tightening even from afar. I imagined my mother checking her banking app twice, wondering why the automatic debit never happened. My father on the phone with his bank manager, feigning calm while fishing for answers. The bank wouldn't connect any dots, they didn't know I was the one funding it. As far as they were concerned, Stephen and Linda Monroe were simply behind on their loan. By week 3, my mother's posts slowed. No country club dinners. No tennis match selfies. The silence spoke for itself. Week 4 brought the first foreclosure warning. A neighbor, because of course it was a neighbor, snapped a picture of a big white envelope stuck to my parents' pristine front door and posted it in the local Charleston Facebook group. The caption read, "Looks like trouble at the Monroe house." Across the envelope, in bold black print, "Final notice." When it showed up in my feed, I laughed. Not the bitter kind this time, just a genuine, almost relieved laugh. 30 days without me quietly covering their bills, and the illusion had already begun to crumble. The comments started rolling in fast. I'd always assumed they'd paid off that house ages ago. Helen carried herself like their money would never run out. Hadn't they just thrown Melissa that extravagant engagement party? Then, right on cue, came the Charleston-style whisper network, rumors about financial troubles, hushed commentary, smug little smiles that didn't even bother to hide the schadenfreude. I set my phone down and poured another cup of coffee. It felt good not caring anymore. Ryan wandered past, glanced at the screen, and arched a brow. "You all right?" "Better than all right," I said, smiling. "Honestly, I think I'm enjoying this a little too much." He laughed. "You've earned it." And he wasn't wrong. I had earned it, every single dollar I'd shelled out for them, every quiet month I kept them afloat while they pretended their finances were untouchable. That was over now. The facade was cracking, and everyone could see. What struck me most was how quickly it all went public. They'd built this flawless image for years, generous, successful, devoted parents of 2 perfect daughters. And within days, that whole performance was unraveling in front of the same audience they'd worked so hard to impress. I didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't offer explanations. Silence was my only contribution. The next morning, a neighbor chimed in on the Facebook thread, "Saw Stephen pacing in the driveway this morning, looked ready to explode." I grinned at the screen. I could picture it perfectly, my father, the man who prided himself on always being composed, now unraveling for anyone to see. My mother was probably inside, hitting refresh on Facebook every few minutes, wondering how many people had seen that foreclosure notice photo. For years, they'd dismissed my work, ignored my accomplishments, reduced my life to background noise. Now, their unraveling was public, undeniable, and most importantly, not mine to fix. Melissa, interestingly, had gone silent. No photos, no comments. I wondered how much she even knew. Had they told her about the mortgage? About the payments I'd been making? That their entire lifestyle was propped up by the daughter they treated like a spare part? Probably not. They only shared information they could spin into a success story. But you can't spin a foreclosure notice taped to your front door, it's the bank's truth, in bold type, for the whole neighborhood to read. The next due date came and went. Another notice followed. Another burst of gossip. And me? I was in the kitchen with Ryan, laughing over something unrelated while chopping vegetables, feeling lighter by the day. I never once picked up the phone to explain. Never once smoothed it over. That was no longer my role. Then my phone lit up with her name. Melissa. I let it ring out. 5 minutes later, another call. Then a text, "Can we talk? Please. Urgent." I dried my hands on a towel, staring at the screen. Across the counter, Ryan raised an eyebrow but stayed quiet. He knew what was happening. The scramble had begun, and of course Melissa would be the first to reach out. She always managed to play supportive sister when it suited her. The third time, I answered. "Oh my God, thank you for picking up," she said, voice shaking. I don't know who else to call." "All right," I said evenly. "What's going on, Melissa?" Her words tumbled out in a rush. "Something's wrong with Mom and Dad's mortgage. They're saying the payments have stopped. There are foreclosure notices. Have you heard about this?" "Did you know?" I kept my voice flat. "I'm aware they've been behind for a while." Her breath hitched. "They told me the bank restructured it. That everything was fine. But now Mom's panicking and Dad's locked himself in his study." "Charlie, this is serious." I almost laughed. "Serious? Now it was serious to them?" "I thought you were doing great," I said. "Didn't they just throw you that massive engagement party?" There was a pause. "Yeah. I mean, things have been tight, but Brendan was handling everything. Or I thought he was." And there it was, the first crack in her perfect image. I stayed quiet. Then she dropped her voice. "Actually, there's more. I think Brendan's been hiding debts from me. I found credit card bills I'd never seen, overdrawn accounts, even a letter from a pawn shop." My stomach tightened. This was about to get messy. She took a breath. I confronted him. "Charlie," he swore it was temporary. Said he had everything under control. But now, she paused, and I could hear it, the tremor that didn't belong to the polished, Instagram-ready Melissa. This was the unfiltered version, the one who didn't know how to hold it together when her world started slipping apart. She went on. "And Brendan's been saying something about a loan, trying to help Dad get one, something about putting the house up as collateral. Dad claims he had no idea, but I found a document with his signature on it. Charlie, it doesn't even look like his handwriting." There it was, the suspicion I'd carried for months confirmed. Brendan wasn't just racking up debt. He was forging signatures. "You're telling me," I asked, her voice steady, "that Brendan tried to take out a loan against their house without them knowing?" Her answer was barely a whisper. "Yes. And when I confronted him, he lost it. Said it was none of my business. That he was just protecting us." I honestly don't know what's true anymore. I leaned back against the counter, inhaling slowly. "Melissa, hear me clearly. This is yours to deal with now. My part's over. For 3 years, I kept that house from falling apart. They didn't tell you that, did they? I was paying their mortgage, quietly, every month, and they never said a word." Silence. I could almost hear her piecing it together, the weight of what that meant. "You've been paying their mortgage all this time?" she asked slowly. "Yes," I said simply. And I stopped. "Why?" Her voice was small, almost childlike. "Because they skipped my wedding, Melissa. On the biggest day of my life, they humiliated me in public, while bragging about you online. That's why." A pause, then her voice softened. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." And for once, I believed her. Melissa had lived inside her bubble of privilege, blissfully unaware of the rot underneath. But that didn't mean I was going to rescue her. "Not this time," I said. "That's not all," she murmured. "Charlie, I'm pregnant." That one caught me off guard. "Pregnant?" "I just found out. And now, Brendan's debt, Dad's mortgage, I don't know where to even start." I closed my eyes and exhaled. The mess was theirs. All of it. "You'll figure it out," I said firmly. "Because I'm done, Melissa. Done." Her voice cracked. "Please, can we just meet? Talk?" I hesitated. "Fine. Tomorrow. But I'm not fixing this for you." The next afternoon, I pulled into my parents' driveway, late enough to make a point. No makeup, jeans, sneakers, hair scraped into a messy bun. I wasn't here to play perfect daughter anymore. The moment I stepped out, my mother appeared in the doorway, her face drawn tight, eyes swollen. "Charlie," she breathed, like she'd been waiting for me to swoop in and make it all disappear. I didn't hug her. Didn't even pretend to smile. I walked straight past into the house I'd been paying for without their knowledge for 3 years. The living room was exactly as I remembered, perfectly staged, expensive, but hollow. A showroom, not a home. Dad sat stiffly on the couch, lips pressed into a hard line. Melissa and Brendan were next to him, both looking uneasy. Brendan didn't even glance my way. "Thank God you're here," Mom said, trailing me into the room, her voice shaking but her posture sliding back into its usual performance. "There's been a misunderstanding with the bank." I lifted a hand. "Save it." Silence. I lowered myself into the armchair across from them, crossing my legs, arms draped casually over the rests, leaning back like I had all the time in the world. "So," I said, "how's everyone doing?" No one spoke. Eventually, Dad cleared his throat. "We need to talk about this situation. There's some confusion about the mortgage and the bank." "Confusion?" I cut in, eyebrow raised. "Dad, there's no misunderstanding," I said evenly. "I've been paying your mortgage for 3 years." His mouth closed with an audible snap. Mom's gaze flicked to Melissa, then back to me. "That's not possible," she whispered. "Not only possible, fact," I replied. "Every single month." Quietly. Without a word from either of you. I stepped in when you were already 2 payments behind and kept you afloat while you played at being country club royalty. Brendan let out a low whistle until Melissa jabbed him in the ribs. "We thought the bank restructured the loan," Mom stammered. "That's the story Dad told you, right?" I cut in. "Well, no. The bank didn't restructure anything. I did. By pulling $3,000 from my paycheck every month so you could keep up appearances." Dad shifted in his seat, saying nothing, a rare moment for him. Melissa leaned forward, eyes wide. "You really did all that?" "Yes," I said flatly. "While you and Brendan were spending freely, I was keeping this house in your name. While Mom posted about family values and raising strong daughters, I was making sure the bank didn't take your roof away." The room went still. Then Brendan, finally speaking, muttered, "What do you want, Charlie? A thank you? An apology?" I laughed, sharp, short. "An apology from this family? Please." I stopped expecting that a long time ago. Melissa's face crumpled. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because," I said calmly, "they didn't want you to know. Admitting their perfect image depended on the daughter they pretend doesn't exist. Too embarrassing for them." Mom started crying, half real, half for show. Dad stayed stone-faced. "What matters is fixing this," he said finally. "It's not too late. If you start making the payments again, we can move forward." I stared at him, almost impressed by the denial. "Move forward?" I repeated. "Dad, there's no moving forward. This is the end. I'm not paying another cent. Not one." His jaw tightened. "After everything we've done for you, you'd abandon your family now?" I tilted my head slightly, smiling without warmth. "Everything you did for me? You mean skipping my wedding so you could gush about Melissa online? Ignoring my calls from overseas? Acting like my military career was just a phase you were waiting for me to grow out of? That everything?" The silence was absolute. "I've got receipts," I added. "Bank records, payment confirmations, every last one. If you want to argue about who kept this house standing, I'm ready." Mom buried her face in her hands. Melissa was still in shock. "And Brendan?" I turned to him. Nice forged loan application you slipped in using Dad's signature. Real clever. Too bad foreclosure beat you to the punch. His face went white. No one spoke. I stood, brushing imaginary lint from my jeans. Here's what's going to happen, nothing. I'm done. You're on your own. The door clicked shut behind me with perfect finality. I didn't glance back. The drive home was silent except for my phone buzzing every few minutes from the passenger seat. Calls from Melissa, texts from Mom, I let them pile up without answering. By the time I pulled into the driveway, Ryan was already there, leaning in the doorway like he'd been waiting. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. Whatever was written on my face told the whole story. I kicked off my shoes, dropped my keys on the table, and poured myself a drink. The apartment felt like another world compared to the circus I'd just walked out of, quiet, uncluttered, honest. No pretenses. No polite lies. I'd barely taken my first sip when my phone lit up again. This time, a single text from Melissa. Brendan left. He's gone. Please. I don't know what to do. I stared at the screen, the ice in my glass shifting. Brendan left? I couldn't say I was shocked, only surprised at how quickly he'd made his exit. Ryan glanced over. Something new? I gave a short nod. Brendan bailed. Melissa's falling apart. He didn't say good or serves her right. He just watched me, waiting for me to decide if I cared enough to respond. I didn't. Not that night. By morning, though, curiosity won. I called her, not to offer help, but because I wanted to hear exactly what kind of wreckage Brendan had left behind. She picked up on the first ring. Charlie, her voice was ragged. I don't even know where to start. Try the part where your husband vanished, I said, keeping my voice level. He emptied our account, she murmured. Every penny. Even the savings. I found out when my card got declined at the grocery store. That almost made me laugh, the thought of Melissa, polished and perfect, stuck at a checkout with a declined card. Did he leave a note? I asked. No. But I found out what he did before he left. Her voice broke. The debt, it's worse than I thought. Not just credit cards, personal loans, payday loans, cash advances, pawn shops. You were right. He sold Mom's jewelry. Grandma's pearls. Everything. I leaned back, letting that sink in. Grandma's pearls, the same ones I wore on my wedding day. And there's more, she continued. He forged Dad's signature again. Tried to take out a $50,000 loan. The bank flagged it because of the foreclosure, so it didn't go through. But he tried. I felt a grim, almost absurd satisfaction. They had chosen him, trusted him, bragged about him, treated him like gold. And this was their reward: theft, lies, betrayal. He's gone, Charlie, she whispered. And I'm pregnant. I'm alone. No money, no home. I don't know what to do. I stayed silent for a moment, letting the weight of her words linger. Then I said, Melissa, I'm sorry you're in this mess. Truly. But you've known who Brendan was for a long time. You just didn't want to face it. You stayed in that bubble because it was easier, while I was the one paying to keep it intact. Her breathing hitched. I get it now. I see it. But what do I do? I'm pregnant. I'm drowning. I have nowhere to go. For the first time since all this started, I felt a flicker of pity, not because she'd earned it, but because it was clear she'd never learned how to live without the safety net our parents gave her. Still, pity wasn't enough to make me take on her problems. You're going to have to work that out, I said quietly. This is your mess to clean up now. Your responsibility. Can I stay with you? She asked, hesitant. Just until I get back on my feet? I closed my eyes, weighing it. 1 week, I said at last. 1 week. That's all, I said. Her eyes widened, a breathy thank you slipping out, like she couldn't believe I'd agreed. But this wasn't for her benefit. I wanted a front row seat to watch the collapse play out. I ended the call, set my phone aside, and drained the last of my drink. The Monroe family was finally tasting the harvest from seeds they'd sown years ago. Melissa showed up the following afternoon with 2 modest suitcases and a crumpled paper bag of toiletries. Her eyes were swollen, her posture slouched, as though the weight of the wreckage she carried was pressing her into the floor. I opened the door without much ceremony. Ryan offered a polite nod, nothing more. We both understood, this wasn't about forgiveness. This was about proximity to the downfall. I pointed her toward the guest room and didn't ask how she was coping. She told me anyway, spilling about how she couldn't wrap her head around Brendan's betrayal, how she'd been blind to the warning signs, and most importantly, how she had no idea what she'd tell people. That last part, protecting the image, was the part that kept her awake. Not the debt. Not the foreclosure. The humiliation. And it was about to get worse. That morning, while she curled on the couch scrolling numbly through her phone, mine lit up with a message from Leah. Have you checked the neighborhood Facebook group? Do it now. Out of idle curiosity, I opened it. Front and center was a brand new post from one of my parents' neighbors, complete with a bright, high-resolution shot of their front door, a glaring red foreclosure notice taped dead center. The caption was blunt, sad to see the Monroes in foreclosure. Never thought this day would come. I nearly laughed into my coffee. The irony was exquisite. Years of polishing their perfect image, every corner spotless, every crack hidden, and now their downfall was pinned to the top of a Facebook thread for everyone to dissect. The comments were already swarming. I thought that house was paid off ages ago. Helen just posted beach photos last week, what happened? Didn't they cover Melissa's whole wedding? Each remark made me feel lighter. Ryan looked over, smirked tugging at his mouth. Guess it's going viral, he said. Guess so, I replied, savoring the satisfaction. I could picture Mom right then, pacing, clutching her phone, scrambling to spin this into something palatable. Sure enough, a few hours later, there was her comment. This is a temporary banking error. We're working with our legal team to resolve it quickly. Thank you for your concern. A banking error. Classic Monroe style, dress denial up in class and hope no one notices. The replies came hard and fast. Banking error? Please. That foreclosure notice is pretty clear. Maybe fewer brunches, more mortgage payments. It was the perfect reversal. They'd spent years using reputation as a weapon, and now the public was turning that same weapon back on them. Melissa leaned over my shoulder, face drained of color. They're destroying them, she whispered. I shrugged. Mom made her choice, she valued appearances more than reality. My phone buzzed again. Dad, this time, call me. We need to fix this. I didn't even pause. Deleted the message. Kept scrolling. The thread grew longer, old acquaintances, distant relatives, chiming in with faux concern or barely veiled judgment. Melissa sank back into the couch, face in her hands. I can't believe this is happening. The entire neighborhood knows. My clients will see it. My boss. That last part actually made me laugh, a real laugh I hadn't managed in days. Melissa, the queen of calculated image control, was finally living with a narrative she couldn't manipulate. I didn't reach out to comfort her. She hadn't earned that. Ryan handed me a fresh cup of coffee and asked, "Want me to mute the notifications?" I shook my head. No. I want to see every single one. Melissa whispered again, softer this time, "Oh. What's our plan?" she asked at last. I finally turned to face her, really looking at her for the first time since she'd walked in. Our plan? Melissa, there's no us in this. You, Mom, and Dad created this disaster. I'm just watching it play out. She didn't argue. Just stayed curled on the couch, eyes glued to her phone, scrolling through jab after jab like she couldn't stop feeding herself the poison. By nightfall, that single Facebook post had racked up over 100 comments and had been passed along to local pages, country club groups, neighborhood watches, even a few business networks. For the first time ever, Monroe family drama wasn't whispered behind closed doors. It wasn't a rumor. It was out there, loud, undeniable, and multiplying by the hour. Later, I lounged on the couch, lazily scrolling through the thread, while Melissa sat opposite me, hunched forward. She held her phone like it might burn her, thumb hovering over the screen, but she wasn't scrolling anymore, just staring, frozen. Ryan came over silently and handed me a glass of wine. I nodded, took a slow sip, stretched my legs across the coffee table. The atmosphere in our apartment was steady, almost tranquil. The chaos belonged to them now. I was just a spectator. Out of nowhere, Melissa spoke, quiet but clear. "Charlie. I want to tell the truth." I glanced at her, raising a brow. "Truth about what?" She hesitated, then blurted, "About Mom and Dad. About the mortgage. About how they treated you. About me." That made me pause. "Why?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. Her voice trembled, but the words came out steady. "Because I can't keep pretending. Everyone thinks you're the villain, selfish, cold, difficult. But that's not true. It's never been true. And I've let them believe it for years." There was a flicker of shame in her voice, enough to almost stir pity in me. "Almost." She kept going. "Reading those comments today, seeing how fast people turned. I realized I've been clinging to this perfect family image, but it was a lie. And I don't want my child growing up thinking this is what family means." That last part landed differently. She met my eyes. "I want my kid to see what real strength looks like. And you're the only one in this family who has it." I gave a short, disbelieving laugh. Big words from someone who's always been Mom and Dad's favorite. "I know," she said quietly. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not even asking. I just want to do the right thing for once." I studied her face for a moment. Maybe this was genuine. Maybe she was just desperate to survive the public shaming. Either way, it didn't matter to me. "If you want to tell the truth, go ahead," I said. "Post whatever you want." Her fingers moved fast, like she was afraid she'd lose her nerve. I watched her type, carefully, deliberately, before hitting publish. Her post was long, raw, and without sugarcoating. I feel like I owe a lot of people the truth. For years, our family looked flawless from the outside. The reality is far from it. My sister, Charlie, has been secretly paying my parents' mortgage for the last 3 years while they dismissed her, belittled her, and treated her like an outsider. When she got married, they refused to attend. They humiliated her online while she was in her wedding dress. That was the day she stopped paying. The foreclosure is happening because they ignored the only person keeping this family afloat. I'm ashamed I stood by and let it happen. Charlie, you deserved better. You were the strong one all along. The notifications started piling up almost instantly, likes, comments, shares. Her confession was spreading faster than the original foreclosure post. Ryan gave a low whistle. "That's gutsy," he muttered. Melissa didn't react. She sat there, unmoving, eyes fixed on the flood of reactions, tears slipping down her cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them away. This wasn't regret, it was the weight of realizing how deeply she'd bought into the Monroe family illusion. And for the first time since she'd moved in, I felt a subtle shift between us. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a quiet recognition that the charade was over. The polished image had been smashed, and the truth was out in the open, untouchable now. I stayed silent, watching her phone light up over and over with comments. Some were shocked, some supportive, but all knew the story now. I didn't add my own. I didn't have to. Instead, I leaned back, sipped my wine, and let the quiet settle. The next morning, I was wiping down the kitchen counter when the doorbell rang. Ryan looked up from his coffee with a knowing smirk. No questions asked. Melissa was still on the couch, scrolling through the tidal wave of replies from last night's post. She hadn't said much since hitting publish. The drained, hollow look on her face was the kind you only get from telling the truth. I tossed the dish towel over my shoulder and opened the door. Stephen and Linda Monroe stood there. My mother's eyes were bloodshot, mascara smeared, her perfect hair limp and uneven. My father looked more unsettled than broken, tie askew, skin pale but still wearing that faint mask of control. "Charlie," Mom croaked, reaching for me like we'd ever been close. "Can we talk?" I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "What for?" "Please," she whispered. "This has gone too far. People are calling us. We're humiliated." Humiliation, the one thing she could never stand. Dad stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Charlie, it doesn't have to get ugly. We can fix this. We're still family." That word, the family, actually made me laugh. A sharp, genuine laugh. "You think this is ugly now?" "No, Dad. This is just reality finally catching up to you." He flinched but recovered quickly. "We made mistakes," he said stiffly. "We're willing to admit that. What matters now is moving forward." "Moving forward? And how exactly would we do that?" "We want you to have the post taken down," Mom blurted. Desperation seeped into her voice. "Tell Melissa to delete it. It's damaging our reputation." From the dining table, Ryan let out another low whistle. I shook my head. "You're not here for me. Or for Melissa. You're here because you care about your image. That's all it's ever been about." Mom's hand trembled as she wiped at her face. "We're sorry," she said, but it rang hollow. "Sorry we missed your wedding. Sorry we weren't better parents. We were hurt you skipped Melissa's engagement party." It felt like betrayal. "Betrayal?" I repeated, almost laughing. "You skipped my wedding so you could post about Melissa on Instagram, and I'm the betrayer?" She nodded rapidly, stepping closer. "We know we hurt you. But we can fix this. We're your parents." "Are you?" My voice was calm, but sharp. "Because parents don't skip their kids' wedding. They don't humiliate them online. They don't take money for 3 years and pretend it was some banking mix-up." Dad's jaw tightened. "We didn't ask you to pay the mortgage." I stared at him. "Exactly. You didn't ask, you just took. You assumed someone else would clean it up, like always." They had no answer. I shifted my weight back against the doorframe. "You already lost me. The house, the reputation, those are just things. But me? You lost me years ago. That's the real wound here." Mom's tears streamed freely, but I felt nothing. No pity. This wasn't cruelty, it was truth. Ryan stood silently behind me, a steady presence reminding me I didn't need anything from these people anymore. Dad's voice hardened. "You're being cruel." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I'm finally being honest. I'm done chasing your love, your approval, your thanks. You're here because your reputation is in ruins, not because you've suddenly decided to care about me." Neither of them denied it. "You can go now," I said plainly. Mom made one last attempt, her voice breaking. "We have nowhere to go, Charlie. We're going to lose everything." I met her gaze without blinking. "You've got each other, that's already more than I ever got from you." I closed the door slowly, with purpose. No slam, no drama, just finality. When the latch clicked, I poured myself another coffee and sank into the couch. Melissa stayed perched in the guest chair, studying me like she wasn't sure where the new lines between us were drawn. She didn't speak. Truth was, there wasn't much left to say. By habit, I checked the local neighborhood Facebook group the next morning. The post jumped out instantly, a fresh picture of my parents' pristine front yard, now sporting a bold red foreclosure sale sign beside the manicured hedges. The caption was practically smug. It's official. The Monroe house is going to auction. Who saw that coming? Not even a flicker of guilt touched me. What I felt was relief. The burden I'd carried alone for years had finally slipped away, not because I couldn't handle it, but because I chose not to anymore. Melissa leaned over my shoulder. It's actually happening, she murmured. Yeah, I replied, sipping my coffee. It is. By midday, word had spread like wildfire. More photos. More gossip. Old country club friends, distant relatives, neighbors, all buzzing about the collapse of Charleston's picture-perfect family. Helen always seemed so put together. Stephen never showed they were struggling. Guess that's why they missed Charlie's wedding. That last one made me laugh. The irony was thick. The same people who whispered behind my back for years were now tearing apart my parents' perfect facade in public. And my parents? Silent. No more Linda Monroe Facebook rants about bank errors. No sunny vacation posts. Just nothing. By late afternoon, a neighbor uploaded a video, a sheriff's deputy taping an eviction notice to their front door. I watched twice. The house I grew up in, where I learned exactly how conditional love could be, was now just another property on a bank's foreclosure list. Ryan sat beside me, his arm draped lazily over the couch. You okay? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. I really am. Melissa barely spoke all day. At one point she asked. Think they'll call again? Probably, I said. But it won't change a thing. The gossip left Facebook and made its way into a local blog by nightfall. Monroe family foreclosure shakes Charleston's elite. Every brutal detail, missed payments, whispers from neighbors, the auction sign, spelled out for anyone to read. I didn't feel exposed. I felt free. For once, I wasn't patching their messes. Their dirty laundry was finally out there, and I wasn't holding the basket anymore. Melissa stood at the window, arms wrapped around herself. They're really going to lose everything, she said. They already did, I replied. The paperwork's just catching up. The rest of the day, I did something I hadn't done in years, nothing. No frantic calls, no financial juggling, no crisis control. Just stillness. Melissa stayed one more night. She didn't ask for help. She seemed to know I wouldn't give it. The shift between us was permanent. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds. No calls, no urgent messages, not even from Melissa. I stretched, touched my wedding ring, and noticed how light life suddenly felt. Ryan was already in the kitchen, making coffee and humming. There wasn't a cloud over us anymore. Melissa quietly packed in the guest room. No requests for extra time. No negotiations. When she was ready to leave, she paused in the doorway. Thank you, Charlie, she said softly. I nodded. No hug, we didn't need that kind of gesture. She left without ceremony, closing the door gently behind her. I stared at my phone on the coffee table, notifications still flashing with the Monroe scandal. Enough. I opened Facebook, posted my favorite wedding photo, Ryan and I laughing mid-dance, with the caption, "Built my life on love, not lies." Post. Then delete. Facebook gone. Instagram gone. Twitter gone. Not logged out, erased. The quiet that followed felt almost startling, but perfect. Ryan sat down beside me. How's it feel? Like I'm finally free, I said, and meant it. Later, I told him about a little town outside Charleston I'd visited once on leave. Peaceful. Grounded. The kind of place where no one knew me as the difficult daughter or the Monroe black sheep. Over dinner, we decided this would be our fresh start. No baggage, no drama. The foreclosure sale would come in a few weeks. I wouldn't watch. I didn't care who bought that house or what the neighbors whispered. That place was never really home anyway. This of our apartment, our life, our choice, was home. That evening, I opened the window, let the breeze in, poured a glass of wine, and sat on the balcony watching the sky change. Ryan joined me, glass in hand. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Outside, life kept moving. Inside, I felt steady. Unshaken. Free. And sitting there, I realized, real revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about freeing yourself from their chaos, walking away from the knots you've spent a lifetime trapped in, and choosing peace instead. This wasn't just the end of a messy chapter, it was an ending I'd written for myself.